Dyno disaster. On this episode, I'm going to be explaining everything that happened when I took the S10 to the dyno, what went wrong, what I screwed up, and ultimately how much power it made. Hey, you probably forgot to like and subscribe to this video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss fun content like this in the future. Back to the show. If you remember on the last episode with the S10, I was preparing it to take it to the dyno to find out how much power it could make and also to improve the tune that is currently on it. I ended up taking it to a local shop near me called PSR Performance. What they ended up doing was they strapped it to the dyno for the first time, and what happened is the truck would only run to about 5,000 RPM before they were not comfortable with running it any further because it was just going way too lean. They ended up calling me trying to figure out and troubleshoot why the truck wasn't running past 5,000 RPM. They asked me how to replace the fuel pump and how to replace the fuel filter. If you recall in a previous video, I did end up replacing the fuel pump because I thought I had fuel pressure issues before. The fuel pump, if you recall, I replaced it with was a Holly model that can support up to 1,000 horsepower. So I knew that was not the problem when it came to fuel supply issue with the S10. Next question they asked me was, did I update the fuel filter? I didn't. It was the stock fuel filter that came with the truck when it had its original engine in it. I read on all the forums that the V8 swap would be fine with the stock S10 filter. It turns out that's not the case. The S10 filter only runs at 43 psi, which these engines will run at that low of a fuel pressure, but they really want 58 psi. So they ended up putting a new Corvette fuel filter into the S10 so they could get the fuel pressure they needed at the engine. They also found that when I had done my initial installation, I had run a return line from my fuel rail back to the fuel tank. Turns out I was wrong. You don't need to run a return line from the fuel rail back to the tank. They will run just fine with a dead-headed system. So I did take that line out, put a cap on it, and solve that issue as well. After they had replaced the fuel filter, the truck then wouldn't run at all, and they could not figure out why that was. After a little investigation, it turns out that what I had done when I installed the initial fuel pump was I had switched the supply and return lines coming from the fuel pump to the fuel filter. And what had happened was with the stock S10 fuel filter, the pump had enough pressure to just push right by the regulator. With this new upgraded filter, the pump didn't have enough pressure and there was no fuel getting to the engine. They ended up having to drop the tank down, pull out the sending unit where I had installed my own custom fuel pump set up in the existing sending unit, and they switched the hoses around, and then they were able to put it all back together and the S10 fired right up. After they resolved the fuel filter and the fuel pump issue, they put it back on the dyno and it once again ran out of fuel. This time it was a nice easy fix. I had run out of injector. I had installed stock Chevy truck injectors, which I thought would be enough for this engine. It turns out it wasn't. They were maybe only about 38, 36 pound an hour injectors I had installed. What I had found out is that these engines really like to have 45 to 50 pound injectors installed to really make the maximum horsepower that they can. A little more time went by. I had ordered the injectors, the shop installed the new injectors, and they were able to finally put the truck back on the dyno and find out exactly how much horsepower it would make. But the troubles didn't end there. When I had initially put this together, I had modified a stock Chevy truck throttle cable to work with this setup. I ended up using a barrel system on the end of the cable that I cut short, and what happened was this kept slipping when they were running it on the dyno. They were wondering why they kept running out of power, why it wasn't RPMing up to what it should be. After a little more investigation, that's what they realized. The barrel on the end of this cable had slipped. Once they had fixed all of the issues that they had found with the fuel system, it was time to finally strap the truck down and see exactly how much power it would make. It made 360 horsepower to the tires with the filter on. Once they took the air filter off, it made 380 horsepower and 350 foot-pounds of torque. That means that this truck has almost a 500 horsepower engine in it. I hope you all like this video and it will help you on some of your builds. Please remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.